Thank you, Mr. Chair. Don't go stealing my intro. In many ways, I do refer to California as Exhibit A on the climate crisis for the reasons Chairman Whitehouse just mentioned and so many more. So I want to begin with that, maybe, knowing that California is the bellwether for the climate crisis, whether it's feeling and responding to the immediate impacts of extreme heat on our most vulnerable, flooding and what it means for our drinking water and agricultural production, the impact of fire and smoke on communities, let alone other agricultural products. We have to not just respond to short-term impacts, but prepare for long-term impacts of our changing climate. Just last week, the New York Times asked what many refer to as the trillion-gallon question. Not the million-dollar question, the trillion-gallon question. But what happens if California's dams fail as a result of extreme weather? If recent disasters are any indicator, we can predict it's a loss of life and property, it's damaged critical infrastructure and vital public facilities, valuable agricultural land is likely to be taken out of production, let alone disruptions to California's water supply and more. So the better question, I think the more responsible question, is what kind of investments are needed to prevent such catastrophic events and reduce the impact on communities. Governor Edwards, appreciate your comments about the impacts of both acute shocks like hurricanes and flooding, as well as chronic stressors like sea level rise and extreme heat. So you know better than anybody, not only does the buck stop with you, we have an opportunity to try to get ahead of it through front-end investments. Can you talk a little bit more about the proactive adaptation measures that have been taken, any related research and innovation efforts in the space?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I am very happy to talk about it because some of the most generous and significant transformative investments anywhere in the country have happened in Louisiana because of the generosity largely of the federal government and taxpayers all over the country, and we are certainly thankful. And of course, we have our non-federal share that we contribute towards that. But in instance after instance, it's making a positive impact, and these upfront investments, while very costly, they save an awful lot of money on the back end because we are not having to go back and rebuild communities and have housing programs and so forth that we had to have before. This can be demonstrated with the Hurricane Storm Damage Risk Reduction System, $14.5 billion investment in the greater New Orleans area. The 2021 storm, Ida, was stronger than Katrina, but because we had this new system, we had nowhere near the damages. For example, other systems have greatly reduced. I think you may not have been here, but with the protection systems put in place along the coast that were authorized by the Corps, we actually reduced the number of structures inundated with water from 11,000 with a 9-foot surge in that area in 2005 to 11 in 2019. So these investments absolutely work. And they save money over the long run, not just in rebuilding costs, but you have less interruption. When Hurricane Ida hit, for example, 15% of the nation's refining capacity was offline. 50% of the state's refining capacity, but 15%. If you can reduce the frequency of those events and the duration of those events, you save an awful lot of money and you avoid a lot of losses and costs to the economy as well.
It's the old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yes, sir.
And so being smart and strategic with those front-end investments do pay a huge dividend, not if, but when major disasters happen. And I appreciate you pointing to examples of the foresight of not just rebuilding to what was, but rebuilding to new, better, safer standards.
Based on the conditions you expect to see in 20 or 30 years.
Exactly.
With 1.5 to 2.5 feet of sea level rise, for example.
So a couple other things. I did want to note, I know the chairman asked you about coastal erosion. That was an area I was going to bring up, but for the record, do you want to highlight the specific challenges in what is referred to in Southern California as the low sand corridor? the coastal area between San Diego and San Luis Obispo, which crosses Orange County, Los Angeles County, Ventura County, impacted infrastructure along the way. It's not just communities and homes and businesses, but important rail lines, second busiest rail region, second only to the Northeast Corridor. So an important one, I think, that the country should be concerned about. Lastly, as my time is up, I do want to just ask Dr. Keenan a quick question about how long-term drought and extreme heat contribute to the speed and deterioration or changes in wear and tear of critical infrastructure, specifically water infrastructure, knowing that not just in California, but throughout the West, water supply, reliability, and affordability is so key.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. I had the privilege of serving the people of California previously and advising on matters of climate, and this is certainly and indeed a challenge to water infrastructure in California. I'll highlight a couple of things, and there's a wonderful CISA report at DHS on this particular issue that I would draw reference to. One, when we have high and low water levels, that has impacts on the cycling of the equipment. Particularly low levels, because when it rains, it pours, right? And the problem is either too much or not enough water. But when we have drought conditions, we have equipment that's not being properly cycled and maintained, for instance, so you need to use it to maintain it in many ways. Also, we lose biomass, right? Grass, trees, they dry up, and we get more sedimentation. That sedimentation clogs filters, it clogs pumps, it creates a number of different problems. And finally, we rely more on surface water for drinking water, irrigation, and the like, as opposed to groundwater. And as we move to surface water, we begin to take on more of that sedimentation. So there's systematic hydrological impacts there. And with that surface water, we also have to pull out all the pollution that comes from stormwater, for instance. So we're getting hit at multiple levels of the system that impairs not only the quantity of moving water, but the quality of moving water.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, just in closing, I want to confirm with Governor Edwards. It is Governor Edwards, correct? I think I've heard
Yes,
Governor Bell Edwards by some of my colleagues earlier in the hearing. You deserve the respect of the proper recognition.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr.
yes,
Chair.
sir. Thank you.
Senator Braun.